So just as an introduction, while we're waiting for Slade to rejoin us, here our presenter for the day. My name's Chrissy Smith, and I'm the Executive Director for the Friends of Netarts Bay Watershed Estuary Beach and Sea, which we like to abbreviate, hey Slade, to WEBS. We're a small nonprofit dedicated to sustaining the Netarts Bay area through education and stewardship. And the way we do that is we fundraise to bring learning opportunities to schools and the general public, as well as engage those groups in science research and actionable stewardship projects to conserve this beautiful place that we live in. We strive to bring all our programs for free, and so that anyone is able to participate and there are no barriers. They are designed to connect youth, locals, visitors to the natural environment and the wonders of the Netarts Bay area. We strongly believe if we can get folks to love a place or a plant or a critter they found in the tide pools, then they will work harder to take care of it and conserve it in the future. This is our second attempt at a virtual presentation, so thanks if you're joining us for the second time. Thanks for coming back again. We do not typically do these types of virtual presentations. We typically like to do this kind of work on a headland where we can actually see beautiful birds that are coming to our area and nesting here, or out on the beach or the trail. But of course, this is unusual times. And so here we are hosting this virtual presentation. I'm super excited that we get to do this today with Slade. I am bummed we don't get to do it in person. Slade is a longtime Oregon resident who was born in Brookings. He comes to us with a Bachelor's of Science from Portland State University in biology, focusing in botany. And he also has a master's degree from Southern Oregon University in teaching. Slade has spent some time working as interpretive park ranger at the Redwood National Park. He has also had a lot of years of experience as a wildlife biologist, conducting seabird and shorebird research in the remotest parts of Alaska, which he's going to share with us some today. He has also done shorebird research projects in Louisiana in response to the Deepwater Horizon spill. And now our county is super fortunate because Slade has decided to settle down here and teach at Tillamook High School, bringing all of this great science experience and research experience to our youth here. So thanks for joining us, Slade. Slade, I gotta tell you, the thing I'm most disappointed about is that you won't be enacting a murre landing on a rock. It was the most accurate thing I've ever seen.
I know. A lot of, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, a lot. I'm a hand talker. And so this is an interesting medium, but with everything going online these days and teaching going online, I have gotten a little bit used to it. So, all right. Do you need me to share my screen now? Is that what needs to happen?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna disappear and let you share your screen.
Okay, excellent. So I think you can see what I'm looking at right now.
Yep, it looks
good.
So
here we go. Yeah, so again, my name is Slade Sapora. Yeah, and I grew up in Brookings, Oregon. I've always loved the outdoors, growing up near the beach, playing in tide pools as a kid. And then I went and studied botany, and as soon as I finished my degree, I got a job as a wildlife biologist with birds, because that's what you do. I spent 8 years total working up in Alaska seasonally, long seasons, usually about 5 months at a time, up in some really remote and amazing places. I returned to work in the Deepwater Horizon oil spill when that happened, and spent almost a year straight down in Louisiana working with shorebirds. After that, I went and got my teaching degree, and here I am in Tillamook now. All the shots you see on this particular slide are my photographs from Alaska. So I'll be doing a little quizzing here and there on some seabird identification, see if you can name some of these awesome, majestic creatures. And let's just get going. So the way that I structure this talk today would be that we'll go into a little bit of seabird biology, talk about what seabirds are, some of the cool, amazing features that they have. And then we'll get into some regional seabirding. Where do you find seabirds in our area? What are the seabirds in our area? And lastly, if we have time, I can talk a little bit about the experience of working as a wildlife biologist up in Alaska. So let's go. Okay, so I just got a little overview of what is seabirds in general here. I always like the historical context, and anyway, so I find this stuff fascinating. Birds themselves evolved from reptiles, and they are basically our only dinosaur left. And if the more we look back into the fossil record, the more we find evidence that it wasn't just one day, a dinosaur showed up fully feathered and jumping out of a tree. Looks like dinosaurs had feathers for a very long time. And the lineage that seabirds come from, or birds come from, the raptors, had tiny feathers for coloration, insulation, and all these other properties. There's some really amazing art coming out now from paleontologists that are studying this that have some really great diagrams of these things. Anyway, so that's when, got to switch back here. We'll get this going. That's when birds first evolved, is about 150, 200 million years ago. The more we find, we keep moving this line back towards that 200 million year mark. First fossil evidence of seabirds, though, is about 60 million years ago. So there's quite a lag between dinosaurs with pretty feathers to an actual seabird itself. And the first fossils that we find of these come from the Indo-Pacific region. Now, this presentation I'll put up later so that you could view it on your own. And anything that's kind of in blue in here, I have embedded hyperlinks, so you could click on those. And where this one takes you is right over here. So a lot of fossils from this time, about 60 million years ago, we find a lot of marine fossils right in this region of the world, right in here. And where my mouse is kind of circling is over in the Pakistani Afghan region. And this is an incredible area, just a wealth of fossil beds there. And partly because just the geology lends itself to it. You can see it's all of this just turned up and scooped up, tilted sedimentary rock, and all of this formed around 60 million years ago. And during that time, this was a big kind of wetland delta, similar to what would be like the Amazon or the Louisiana Delta today. And so it's not like they just evolved in this area, it's just we have a record of it, of this time from this area that's really well preserved. We also find evidence of first sort of whale ancestors, Pakicetus, and some other organisms during this time as well, turned up in these rocks. And it's a really cool perspective to look at this because you can just see how wrinkled it is. And it goes, kind of linear here, and then it turns up, and that's basically because India is a giant battering ram that has slid in, crashing into these sediments, pushing them upward, folding up the Himalayas. You see a similar thing on the other side. Here you can see the beds turned sideways, but it's more covered in jungle on that side of the world. Anyway, cool stuff. I talk a lot about this in my class because I find that stuff fascinating. One of the things that we see too from this time would be some of the features that birds don't have today that they did have back then. So some of these fossilized birds and seabirds you find actually did have teeth, which birds today do not have teeth. So bird today, bird back then. Extra credit for anybody that can name this bird right here. This is a photo I took up in Alaska. This is a bird that does occur here along our coast, although we rarely see them from the shore. You have to go out into a boat to see these. They wash up on shore. I found several of these, but people often just mistake them for a gull. But if you look real closely, the nose has an interesting feature right up here that gulls do not have. Worldwide today, there's 280 species of seabird that exist today in the world. That's quite a variety of them. Many seabirds, cross boundaries and range across like the North Pacific or the South Pacific. They're not as regional to specific little habitats because the ocean is big and vast. And along the Oregon coast, the best numbers I could find, there's around 400,000 seabirds that breed along the Oregon coast. The largest colony of seabirds is the Aquina Head Lighthouse, and that number is under 100,000, but pretty close up there to that. It's just murres alone that attempt to breed there, and we'll talk more about that when we get into our region. Did anybody guess this bird yet? Okay, it is a, drum roll please, northern fulmar. Fulmars are a type of tube nose related to albatrosses, and so they have this cool little projection across the top of the bill, and we'll talk about what that's for in just a minute. But they are a flying bird that soars along the ocean with their wings open, so they trail behind fishing boats commonly, and they have this great little hook in the bill which allows them just while they're flying to dip down and grab food off the surface of the ocean. Because of that, they're impacted highly by things like plastic as well, because they mistake it for something edible. Okay. So a question to the audience out there. What is a seabird? How would you define a seabird? What makes a seabird a seabird? So the first one would be, explain or define just the characteristics of a seabird. And that's what we're going to do. But I want you to kind of think in your head, well, what would make a seabird a seabird? And then if you could name some examples of them, I'm going to go over those here now. So, okay. So first we're going to talk about just what is a seabird. So when we're talking about seabirds, I'm generally referring to what we as biologists call primary seabirds. And primary seabirds are birds that obtain food entirely from the ocean, flying, swimming, or diving, but technically not wading. So this does throw some birds we might consider seabirds out of the mix. I'm bringing up the chat here. Aha, someone guessed petrel. Excellent guess. You were very close. And they're related to petrels. It's just a little larger than a petrel. Okay, no guesses on seabirds, and that is just fine. So yes, in this photo here, I actually have some photos of some petrels that you could see. And right here we have a Leach's storm petrel, and then right down here we have a baby fork-tailed storm petrel that we were working with in Alaska. I believe that's my hand right there holding it. So primary seabirds obtain all their food from the ocean, and again, not wading, so that throws birds out like a black oyster catcher or something that you would generally consider a seabird because they live off the ocean. But these are birds that they are out in the ocean, not really associated with land for the majority of their life cycle and for their daily needs. Secondary seabirds are birds that depend on the ocean for a part of their life, but then part of their life cycle, they rely on land. Some ducks that we have, like harlequins or surf scooters, they are out in the ocean, for all of their food during part of the year, but then part of the year they fly inland to nest, interior lakes and things like that, or up in the Arctic. And during that time of year, their food comes from a land source. Sandpipers fall into that category as well. A lot of your shorebirds are secondary seabirds. They're even phalaropes would be in that category as well. They feed out in the ocean, but then part of the year they come inland to nest. So as seabird biologists, we generally focus on primary seabirds, unless you're dealing with the wintering range. Okay, there are 4 different orders of primary seabirds, right? And the kind of quintessential one that we think of when we think of a primary seabird are penguins, right? Penguins are that textbook seabird. They're the one that people mistake all other seabirds for when you bring up seabirds. So show them a picture of a mirror and they're going to say penguin. We can talk about that in a second. There's 18 species of penguin in the world. Not a huge diversity really when you think about, there being 280 species of seabird in the world. Only 18 of them are penguins, yet they get the majority of the credit for seabird business. All penguins are southern hemisphere. The northernmost penguin would be the Galapagos penguin, coming right up to the equator. But they touch all those southern continents. They're in Africa, South America, Australia, and Antarctica, and all the islands scattered thereabout. I got a little diagram here of all 18 penguins. I can't even name all 18 of those, so I'm not going to ask you to. Another group that is really also, I would say, a quintessential seabird would be the albatross and the petrels, the tube noses, as we call those. And I mentioned that with the fulmar. They have this little tubey projection that sits atop their nose that sticks out, and 2 little nostril holes generally. And we'll talk about this in the next slide. This is how they filter out salt water from their blood and then get rid of it. They excrete it through this tube. They can also smell through it. The albatross has 2 big barrel tubes on here as well. This includes albatross, petrels, shearwaters as well. The next group that has seabirds in them would be the pelicans, or the pelicaniformes. And these include pelicans and cormorants. Some pelicans, some cormorants are secondary seabirds or interior. I have a picture here of the double-crested cormorant. This is the most common cormorant we have in our area. In fact, there's quite a variety of double-cresteds out there. And it's really a group that is going to be split up, or is being split up currently, because there's many subspecies and varietals of those. And this group has an interesting feature that no other bird, or seabird, has at least, and it is right here in this picture. You're wondering what I'm talking about, this little foot. With the Pelecaniformes, they have all 4 toes are webbed, giving them 3 webs, whereas most birds that have webbed feet have 3 webbed toes right here, and then they got a little thumb in the back that just kind of hangs off the back and is very tiny and reduced in some to just a little claw nub that sticks out. But with the Pelecaniformes, that 4th toe has swung around and is webbed, giving them this unique foot feature that you can identify pretty readily. I find dead cormorants on the beach pretty commonly. And sometimes it's just a skeleton with a foot, and you can pick up that leathery foot and you can show it to your friends, and they're going to think you're kind of gross, but it's pretty cool actually. The last group of seabirds for primary seabirds is the biggest group, the most diverse, and that is what we call the Charadriiformes. This is a huge order of birds in general. Charadriiformes cover gulls, terns, auks, shorebirds as well are in this group, although they're not seabirds. There's a huge variety of birds in this one group, and most of our seabirds worldwide, probably the biggest group is this one here. And in our area, this is where you get your huge variety of seabirds. So Charadriiformes, again, you've got terns, which we have in our area, and people often just mistake them for gulls and they go fairly unnoticed. The murres are the most common of those, and in our area, the most common bird and the most common seabird in the North Pacific would be the common and the thick-billed murre. Their numbers are huge. Tufted puffin, horned puffin, and then all the variety of auklets that are out there. And auklets are tiny, tiny-ish seabirds, size of a robin to a jay or something like that, and they dive. They use their wings underwater. The auklets do, puffins and murres as well, to basically fly underwater, similar to what a penguin does, although they can still fly, although very poorly. And as Christy mentioned, I could demonstrate one trying to land. I have a photo of it, so I'll save you my virtual demonstration. So again, what makes a seabird? Some of the adaptations that seabirds have for a life at sea are really fascinating. One of the things that first caught my interest with seabirds was learning about some of these adaptations. When I worked at Redwood National Park, it's a scattered national park. It's got 3 state parks in it. It runs up the coast of Northern California, and it's often recognized just for that redwood tree element. There's a whole coastline that the park protects there, and we have seabird colonies there as well. They're really vibrant seabird colonies. And so I did presentations and walks and guided tours on seabirds because as I read about them early on when I was still in college, I started looking and studying them, and I just found them completely fascinating, their biology. So one of the things they have is they have a special gland right in between their eyes, in their forehead. In the tube noses, they have 2 of them, 1 on each side. And in the Charadriiformes, it's just 1 large one. And this gland acts as like a small kidney, basically, and it pulls salt out of the blood through a countercurrent exchange, through osmosis, basically, or diffusion. And the salt gets concentrated in these little tubules that they have that run next to their blood vessels, and then it exits out their nose. And in the tube noses, the albatross and petrels, these little ridges have water that runs down. They have little ridges that take the water, channel it down, and then it drips off the end of their nose so that it's not blowing back into their eyes while they're flying. It's running down and then blasting out to the sides. Pretty cool adaptation. All right, we got a question here. Let's go. This is from Eric. What connects murres and puffins with gulls to place them in the Charadriiform grouping? Comment. Common murrelet is a seabird. Yeah, murrelets are seabirds and murres are seabirds too. The Charadriiformes group itself That's a good question. What places them in there? Birds are placed into groups based on physical features, and we do this kind of evolutionarily. They run through the bird book in a sequence we call phylogenetically. And so we're looking at shared characteristics. It's not just your habitat, for instance, that can place you into a group. It's more your physical features. And so most of the time the birds fit neatly into that, but then every now and then you'll get a weird outlier that doesn't seem to belong to the group it's in, although it does. All of these are kind of coastal seabirds, and you could probably divide the Charadriiformes into other suborders, and I'm sure it is, where you've got the alcids, you know, in one group, and then your gulls and terns in another, and your shorebirds in another subsection. And as you go through the bird book, they do kind of follow this. Similar to where ducks and geese are all in one order, or falcons and hawks are in one group. So it's that shared set of physical traits and characteristics. Give you a rough, loose answer to that. With, so jumping back into this, and that's a really good question. Yeah, anyway, I could go on and on about that. With seabirds, one of the interesting things about them is they have a huge variety in bill shape or morphology, and there's a huge variety of food sources in the ocean. It's not all just fish, right? They're not all just snacking on, you know, sardines and capelin and things like that. So depending on the food source, again, the bill shape varies. For your birds that are flying along the surface, they generally have this big downturned hook at the end, which allows them to grab stuff off the surface and kind of spear it. And then they'll land, usually, and then swallow it down if they catch something, or they can just catch it in the wing. Cormorants have a very long bill, so do murres as well. They are birds that chase fish underwater and grab them out of the water. Auklets have a really unique array of food sources, but most of them are planktonic in some way. So they'll either dive down and catch small plankton like copepods or krill. In the case of this bird right here, any guesses on this one here? We can do a little pop quiz on this one while we're at it. This is a unique auklet. Occasionally they show up here in the winter. They don't breed here. They breed up in off the Canada coast or Alaska. This auklet here has a unique way of eating, and it specializes in small jellyfish. And it has an upturned bottom part of the bill that is pointy, almost the inverted way of the albatross there. So it comes up underneath and grabs and hooks from the bottom and can swallow that way, or it can take a chunk out of a larger jellyfish as well. This bird here is a, drum roll, parakeet auklet. A parakeet auklet. They're pretty large for an auklet, a pretty beefy bird. You can see me holding them there, and they are a burrowing bird as well, so they dig burrows into the ground. Another photo that I have right here, this is one that I took as well. This is a rarer type of cormorant, and I'll give you a second to think about that one. We don't have them here. They only occur in the Aleutian Islands, and they're named for a physical feature that you could see on them. Another feeding strategy that seabirds have that is really cool is pictured right here. I'm holding a juvenile puffin. This is a tufted puffin chick, or juvenile at this point. You can see it's starting to get adult feathers around the face while it still has these downy feathers around it. Seabirds and birds in general are really cute when they're chicks, and they're beautiful when they're adults, and that in-between phase when they're going through multiple weird molts all over their body at different phases get really gangly and interesting looking, to say the least. On the puffin, you can see an interesting feature. They have little projections on the roof of their mouth. These are little fleshy, but rather stiff, almost feel cartilaginous points that point backwards, like little serrations, basically. And their tongue, this allows them to, as they're diving down and grabbing multiple bait fish, they don't just want to grab one fish at a time and fly it back to their chick. They want to get a whole ton. So they collect up what's called a bill load, and they'll get multiple fish. This allows them to, let me do my demonstration here, to grab a fish. Now, if you tried to just grab another one with the pencil in your mouth, fish would fall out. That would be a bummer. So what they do is they grab the fish and then they hold it to the roof of their mouth with their tongue. And they can still grab more fish, and the little projections keep the fish from squirming or slipping out, or squid, as they eat a lot of squid. The puffins have this, the rhinoceros auklet has this as well. Got another question here. And someone guessed rhinoceros auklet. Ah, close. We're going to have those coming up. This one right here is a red-faced cormorant right here, named for the red on the face of these. And again, only in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska and the Bering Sea, North Pacific. And then this was a parakeet auklet here. I have some weird ones that occur only in Alaska because that is where I spent a lot of my time working, and had a lot of time to photograph as well, because I would lived out on the islands for 3.5, 4 months straight, work 7 days a week. So great opportunities to take some amazing photos. Another cool adaptation that seabirds have is in the tube noses. So when your albatross and petrels and shearwaters, they convert food in their stomachs to this concentrated oil to feed their young. These birds don't just fly right offshore, get food, and come right back to the nest. They'll leave for days or weeks at a time to fly out to where their food source is. Sometimes their food source is dispersed, and as we're going to see in a minute, in the case of many of the albatrosses, it's not even near where they nest. They have to nest in a warm climate, yet feed in a cold climate. So they have to travel large distances to collect food, and so they swallow that food, convert it down to this real thick concentrated oil, you know, like a real high calorie sort of cooking oil consistency. And here's a picture of a baby fork-tailed storm petrel that they're bringing the food back to. In the case of the storm petrels, they have longest incubation periods of 40+ days for seabirds, and they have really, really low egg temperatures. You could reach into a nest. They are a burrower again, so it's just a burrow. You can reach in there, and usually you can feel an egg if the adult's not there and tell if it's an active nest or not. Maybe the adult ran further back and hid, but if the egg is warm, it's being incubated. With petrels, you can't use that rule of thumb. Because the adults can leave the nest for hours or even a day, and that egg can feel ice cold and still be viable, which is pretty amazing because they have to go so far to get food. They reduce that food down to this oil. Here's a picture of a fulmar barfing some of it up. And that also works as a defense. Bird oil is really bad for bird feathers, right? Kind of no duh. But one of the reasons why it is so bad for bird feathers is not necessarily its toxicity. When we think of an oil spill, most people generally think, oh, they're bad because it releases all these toxic chemicals into the ocean, which is true. But the main thing that kills birds, especially seabirds, is not the toxicity of the oil, it's the oil itself getting on their feathers, and it gunks up their feathers to where water then goes and touches the skin of the birds, and the birds go hypothermic and die. And this can happen quickly. This can happen, you know, in under an hour. You can start to see mass seabird mortality from this. Water doesn't touch the bird's skin. Their feathers act as a dry suit, basically. They have two types of feathers. They have a rigid outer feather, and then they have a really dense layer of down underneath, and the rigid outer feathers compact around it. They and keep them dry. So when oil gets on it, it's a bad deal. This is a great defense, though, for birds from other birds. Threatening another bird with an oiling will keep predators away. So if you get near their nests and really provoke them, this is not my photo, and I've never had a fulmar try and puke on me. That's a pretty high stress situation for the bird, and as a biologist, you really try and avoid doing that to them. But it's kind of neat, and it does have a very strong smell as well. I actually kind of like the smell. I've gotten used to it. Bird puke to me is seabird puke reminds me of home. Okay, here's a picture of here's some images of albatross trackings, and this is some not brand new science. Putting transmitters on birds. We've been doing that for a while now. transmitters are getting smaller and smaller. I've worked with shorebird projects where we're able to put little tiny transmitters on the ankles now of things like Dunlin and leave them there for a year. And then you can recover them and you can get the entire flight track for a whole year, which is just amazing data. They started putting trackers on albatross around 20 years ago because they're such a big bird. And they started doing some tracks to see that this is a nesting bird right here, obviously, off the coast of Africa, between Africa and Antarctica. And these are just its flight paths when it's feeding from the nest. And look, you're looking at 500-kilometer distance right down here. So these birds are going thousands of kilometers in a feeding trip to collect food for their young to bring back to the nest. In Alaska, we would see birds. I would see albatross off the coast of the Aleutians, and you're kind of wondering, well, aren't they nesting right now? And they are. They're nesting off the French Frigate Shoals, a chain of islands, ancient Hawaiian islands, just north of the Hawaiian Islands. And they're actually flying all the way up to Alaska to collect food to then come back thousands of miles, you know, in 10 days to feed their young. Pretty impressive, pretty impressive. And again, if you guys have any questions or comments as I'm going through these, just throw them into the chat, share them, and I'll get those and I'll answer them. I'll back up. There's a little bit of a lag here, maybe, but it's not too bad, and I don't mind at all. I enjoy it. And see, we got one right there. Look at that. Oh, it says nothing right now. Okay, so fly or swim with seabirds and seabirds, their adaptations to water. If you're going to be good at one of these, you're not going to be good at the other. So if you're good at flying, great, awesome. Don't plan on really, you know, going for a deep swim. And if you're good at going for deep dives and swimming, probably not going to be so good at flying. So let's talk about a few of those adaptations, and then I'm going to jump right into, after this, birds in our area and where to find those. So for flight at sea, we just talked about the albatross, and so we'll talk about those now. Those are what we call soaring birds. And soaring birds have these general sort of profiles. They have long, narrow wings, albatross and shearwaters. Here's some albatross right in here coming in for a landing. The largest wingspan in the world belongs to the wandering albatross, I believe. And we're talking about close to a 12-foot wingspan. So just walk 12 feet out on your floor. It's pretty impressive to think about a wingtip to wingtip. That's how far their wings spread. In my classroom, for my marine biology class, we usually get a big bolt of paper and roll one out, and then we sketch out, you know, the measurements of the bird, you know, the head to feet, tail, and the wingspan, and cut it out, and then put it up on the ceiling, kind of sit over the class. It's pretty impressive to have that there and think that the bird today exists that's that size. These are basically the vultures of the sea. They cover huge areas in search of food. You're not really tied, you know, they follow the currents and the seasons of the ocean. They can glide for days to weeks without flapping their wings, which is pretty amazing and impressive to think about. The albatross has bones that will lock in place in its wings, so their kind of elbow joint sticks out, it locks in place, and so they can fly without really having to flex, right? Flexing would be the opposite for them, so it's almost a relaxed position. And they have a certain flight pattern that they'll take into the wind, where they'll fly into a headwind, it'll lift them up, and then they'll bank out of it, drop down, and then soar across and then turn back into the wind. And they can kind of do this flight pattern, just banking and turning without ever having to flap, as long as there's consistent winds. And so you find albatross in those windy places, right? You find them in the latitudes, not really, you know, near the doldrums, and sometimes equatorially, but more in the northern southern regions, right? The roaring 40s in those areas. So you find them down in the Drake Passage off of South America, or you'll find them, you know, up in Alaska, and even off our coastline parts of the year as well. And they feed mainly on the surface, up a few meters. They have a great sense of smell, and so they'll fly huge areas, again, just in search of food. Albatross tend to be scavengers. They tend to scavenge big things that are floating, while as your storm petrels down in here have a really cool adaptation for feeding. They feed on plankton, on zooplankton mainly. So small things, small as copepods to krill and euphasids and other things. And because zooplankton move down in the water during the daytime, kind of down as deep as 600 meters, and then they migrate back up at nighttime to feed. They call this vertical migration in the ocean, and this is a daily cycle they go through. The petrels feed at night, and so their little group subname is Hydrobatidae, which means water bat, because they come out at night and they kind of fly silently over the ocean. They're attracted to lights, so lights on ships can attract these things. Where I worked in Alaska, we had on Bull Deer Island over 2 million storm petrels on this tiny island that burrowed in. And at nighttime, it would just get crazy. They would be everywhere. And if you walked outside at night, which was only a few hours, so you had to be out late, like 2 in the morning or something with your headlamp on, you would most likely get hit in the head if you were out there for any length of time by a storm petrel, just fly straight into you. Luckily, they're a light-bodied bird, and they have a great little screech that they do too. It's pretty funny. Yeah, anyway, so they feed just by kind of walking along the surface of the water. They use their light bodies and their wings, and they have these broad little web feet. They can kind of walk along the surface using that water tension to just pick off the surface. There we go, beat myself to it. And another flying pattern, if you're not going to be soaring or you're not going to be walking along the surface of the ocean, would be to plunge dive. And this is generally what we think of when we think of kind of aerial diving birds. So in our area, we have terns that do this, and gulls do it too. But in our area, the Caspian tern is the big plunge diver that we have, that we can see pelicans, birds on land would be like ospreys and eagles as well. And in the tropics, it's your gannets that are your plunge divers, your blue-footed booby and things like those. They are experts at it, and they will drop down, and then they'll actually use their wings a little bit underwater to push them into these giant bait balls. And I have a link here to some video footage of that. I'm not going to show that now, but feel free to jump in and check that out. I think we got some chats going on here. Let's see what we got. Okay, Shelley asks, many varieties of shearwaters. What variety do we have off the Oregon coast? So shearwaters are a group of tube noses. Fulmars are probably our closest version of a shearwater. They're about that size. Gull size to larger, almost like a small albatross in that range, bigger than a petrel. And shearwaters don't nest here off the Oregon coast. They nest in the southern hemisphere, which is interesting in and of itself, why that's the case. And I'm going to flip around and I'll show you that in just a minute. Why so few birds nest in the southern hemisphere, and why more birds nest up north. So we don't have, it's hard to see shearwaters here. The place that I've seen them is off of Cape Lookout. They're kind of out in the ocean, and you can see them feeding here. So they nest in the southern hemisphere in our winter. So they're down there nesting, and they show up here in our summer, but not to nest, but to feed. And they go all the way up to Alaska. In Alaska, they have huge numbers of shearwaters. And again, the main one that we see is the sooty shearwater here. And you'll see them kind of out over the ocean, soaring and flying and turning, and they really have that flight pattern that makes them stand out. They just seem so good at flying and so adept. Gulls are actually really amazing flyers, but these are even better than that. They really stand out and catch your eye when you do see them, but usually you have to be out in a boat or out in some headland where you're kind of out there looking out into the ocean. And again, I've seen them from Cape Lookout. That's the one place in the area where I've seen a sooty shearwater. Oh, here's a little diagram I had showing the flight pattern of the albatross and how it is that they are able to basically just turn into the wind and use that as sort of their driving force. Okay, we're going to talk about diving, and then we're going to talk about our area. So diving seabirds are really cool. Of course, penguins are the one that get all the credit, right? Or for that, but in our area, we don't have penguins. We have murres, puffins, and auklets that dive. Cormorants dive as well. Cormorants don't use their wings underwater, so they tuck their wings back. They're a pretty big-bodied bird, probably why that fourth web toe comes in handy. And because cormorants don't use their wings under water because they're so big, they actually have to dry their wings when they come up. You'll see them often doing this pose sitting out there. The Three Graces is a place where you can see cormorants hanging out and doing that in our area, right in between Garibaldi and Rockaway. I have a video here. Hang on, we got a chat coming up. There it is. Question, Eric. How far off the coast would someone have to travel to observe varieties like fulmars and albatross? Usually it's not super close, right? Usually you're having to go 20 miles or more out there, but that's not true. You could probably go like 10 miles out and start to see these things. You do need to get out there where the currents are happening and where there's also upwelling, and that's usually where they occur. So again, that sort of 40-mile mark is where you get the most upwelling. And we'll look at a Google map here in a minute to kind of, you can back out and kind of see that. But occasionally they do come nearer shore. But usually you have to go out on some of those pelagic trips that are all day long. Tuna boats, if you had the opportunity to go out with someone tuna fishing, that's where you would find those birds out at that distance, usually starting after about 10 miles, 20, and then it's going to increase. So nothing you're going to take a skiff out and see. So the wings on diving birds are generally narrow and pointed. If you're going to be good underwater, I'm going to switch here and show you guys a video. And this is just a video taken from an aquarium, but it shows a puffin underwater. And so you can see their wings are streamlined. They're real pointy on the end, really good for maneuvering underwater. And notice all the bubbles coming out from them as well. That's all the air trapped underneath those outer feathers kind of pushing out as they move around underwater. That acts as insulation and keeps the water, again, from touching their skin. All the air is trapped in their down. They're able to maneuver and pick around the rocks and really agile underwater. And you have to be to catch a fish underwater. I don't know how many of you have been tried to catch a fish with your hands or something. Not even close, right? Okay, let me get back to my slideshow. Oh, it keeps tricking me out here. Hang on a second. There we go. Click back through these. And murres, commonly it's recorded that they dive down to 300 feet, but there's been records of them down at 600 feet. They've been caught in crab pots that were down at that depth, and by the time the pot was pulled up, the bird was well decomposed or on its way, so they knew that it didn't get caught in the pulling up of it, and it swam into the crab pot. So pretty amazing divers down there. Some of the adaptations that seabirds have to have then for doing these deep dives, they have to, well, they store oxygen in large amounts in a protein called myoglobin. It's a cousin to hemoglobin. All vertebrates have hemoglobin as their blood protein, but in seabirds, it's evolved enough to be its own little subcategory of that. They slow their heart rate, and they can divert blood flow from certain peripheral organs that aren't essential in the moment, like stomach and other things like that, similar to what we get when we get a fight or flight response. But for them, it's more of a Zen response. And that's specialized feathers that I've mentioned. Their outer feathers, they oil with their own special oil gland. The oil gland is located at the back of seabirds, just above or on the tail region, and you'll often see birds sticking their bill back in that area, pulling it out and then going into their other feathers. And what they're doing is they're oiling up their bill, and then they're oiling and straightening their feathers. And if you ever spent time around seabirds, if they're not fishing or doing anything else, they're preening, they're oiling, they're keeping their feathers nice. And that sort of waterproofs them and also gives them that kind of sheen this kind of glossy iridescent sheen when they're diving underwater, and you see them as well. And cormorants do not oil their feathers as much, partly because it would make them more buoyant if they did. It would trap more air, and being such a big-bodied bird, you want to be you really want to be less buoyant. Seabirds have solid bones, not hollow bones, and because they're heavy-bodied with pointed wings, they're also really bad flyers. Here's a picture of a murre trying to land on a cliff in Alaska. And how they'll do this is they can't just fly in, la, 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 and plop, land right on their little nest ledge. They have to go really fast to fly. So if you ever watched a bird try and take off from the water, a heavy-bodied seabird or a loon even, they'll have to taxi for a long time. So they'll flap, 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 flap until they get enough speed, and then they'll take off. Murres come in at a high rate of speed. So they're really flapping fast, coming in towards the cliff, coming in towards the cliff. Here's the cliff, here's the murre, and then they have to pull up, and then they kind of lose speed as they go up, and then they kind of drop onto their ledge, ideally. They miss their ledge all the time. Oftentimes they'll come in and then turn, fly back out to sea, circle back and make another shot. They'll come in and just crash on top of the wrong nest or a whole group of birds and walk across their heads, and it's just really noisy, chaotic, and funny to watch. We would also find murres and puffins that would overshoot the cliff and then lose speed and crash onto the top of the island where it's all covered in grass and thick vegetation, and they get stuck here. They have to walk out to the edge, jump off, and come back, but oftentimes they can't find the edge. They get disoriented in the vegetation. Eagles circle the grassy areas of the islands, searching for this, right? Searching for a stuck bird. You see the grass moving. And we would often find these birds on our little foot trails that we would make. The bird would find the trail and start walking it the wrong way, sometimes inland. They have no idea. They're just not good land navigators, much as you would get lost at sea if it was foggy out. And we would grab them and take them over to the edge and then give them a boost. Okay. Wow. we're almost at 50 minutes here, but I want to jump in. I'm going to speed ahead then real quick. I know. My hand acting, it needs some work. Okay. I'm going to skip through just a few of these, and we're going to jump towards our area here because I really do want to give that some justice. These are some shots. I can't just skip right over these. These are some photos that I took on Chauwiat Island, which is near the Aleutians in a group called the Samiti Islands. So here we are looking down at the birds on the cliff. This is a colony of common murres in this case, and they're just packed onto these ledges. And it's really hard to grasp how many birds you're looking at until you zoom in. And then you can see just how many are packed down there. Almost every one of these birds is on an egg, right? And you can tell by their posture. This bird is standing up, not on an egg. It might have a mate there, this bird, but all the rest of these kind of hunched down, their wings out to the side, are on eggs, or they're mates of birds that are on eggs waiting to switch. And they'll even pack onto these ledges here. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. Okay, so in our area, places to birdwatch. I put the 3 capes up here, starting at the south with Cape Kiwanda, Cape Lookout, and then Cape Meares. All of these are excellent spots to birdwatch. If you're looking north, here's 3 Arch Rocks right here, and this photo, the visibility on this day is just incredible. You can look all the way north and see Cape Falcon here, and then Tillamook Head over here. Cape Falcon is another wonderful spot just north of us, and there's a marine reserve off of there as well. Cape Lookout is a fantastic spot. You can hike out to the end, and it does put you out in the ocean far enough that you could start to see, you'll see murres commonly there, and puffins as well. And even as you're walking along the cliff, you can hear murres down below. A few murres try and nest along these cliffs every year, and you can hear them. Tufted puffins occasionally, and then, like I said before, I've seen sooty shearwaters out circling out in here as well, which is really close to shore. Pacific City, Cape Kiwanda allows you to hike, all around up on it, and you can get to some vantages course, stay behind the cables and ropes. But back in this little area in here, you get a little elevation, and that allows you a greater distance and then a down shot at them. So binoculars work great. A spotting scope is best, but you have some great shots at looking at seabirds there. You can look towards Haystack Rock even and see some puffins coming back and forth in that area. And all of these are a part of Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge. Under 2,000, something like 1,500 small islands that make up this entire wildlife refuge, which is managed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And those, both of those have links embedded to them. So places to see seabirds. Netarts Bay, of course, Webbs is based out of here. In Netarts Bay, pop quiz time, folks. Identify this bird and then answer me this question. Is it a seabird or not a seabird? These are just some photos I took in the last week or so in flopping around out there. So if anybody can identify this bird, always a standout and large, eye-catching, beautiful bird, and then answer if it is a seabird or not a seabird. This is a bird you'll see in the bay, always, like I said, eye-grabbing. I believe, actually, my son took this photo, Tatum. He's 6. He's got a good eye, and we have good zoom. Okay, and then another bird as well, seabird or not a seabird. This is my Bigfoot photo right here of this bird. This is one I always am impressed with seeing. It's a lousy photo, but it's identifiable. Okay, so for the first bird we brought up, oh, we got some. Yes, Eric, you are right. It is a loon. This is the common loon. We see these a lot in the bay throughout the winter. They don't breed here, so this bird's going to fly off here soon and head up to some of the Arctic or Canada and the lakes up there. Loons are some of the oldest types of aquatic birds, and they're always first in the bird book for that reason. So we find loon birds going back quite a long ways in the fossil record. And that loon family dates back something like 50 million years. Shelley, you also guessed a loon. Good job. And seabird or not a seabird? It is not a seabird, exactly. This bird over here in the top left, not a seabird. Good job. Good job. There are some loons that we find like up in the Arctic and stuff as well. Nesting, the yellow-billed loon is a really beautiful, awesome one. I've seen just a couple of those, pretty rare as well, but no, not a seabird, even though it's in a bay or an estuary here. This bird over here is the, if anybody guessed this one, hooded merganser. Nice job, Eric. It's just a beautiful bird. I'm always excited when I see one of these, and you can see these commonly in Netarts Bay. These are not seabirds. Some of the seabirds you can find in Netarts Bay, the cormorants, and here we have 3 species. The double-crested can be a seabird. It really varies. Again, there's such a variety in the double-crested group that they're looking at splitting this up into multiple subspecies or potentially even different species. But the 2 varieties that we do have that you can sometimes find in the bay would be the pelagic cormorant, I see those commonly, and then the Brandt's cormorant. These are considered seabirds, right? And the other one that you'll find in the bay is the Caspian tern right here. Caspian terns are, I love terns. Terns, these often get mistaken for gulls. People will, they'll fly overhead and I'll say, oh, there's a tern. And people will be like, it's just another gull, but they're not. And they have a very distinct raspy call. The wings are more pointed, and these are a plunge diver. These dive and catch fish, and because of that, they get in some groups, people don't like birds that eat the fish that they like to eat. So cormorants and terns, they do have an impact on fisheries, but so do lots of things that we do as well. And they're a beautiful, beautiful bird. That's one that you'll commonly see in Netarts Bay. If we cruise out to Cape Meares, though, you have a much better opportunity to see some real seabirds in action. If you walk out to the end of the lighthouse point, there's some great opportunities. There's a few good vantage points to look out and see murres and puffins there. Before you get out to the lighthouse in the parking lot, right off to the right on the north side, there's a wonderful cove down in here, and murres will sometimes be down on the rocks here. And out on these islands here, murres have been attempting to nest, and historically did nest. You'll see murres in large rafts right out in this area here, thousands of them, or hundreds to thousands, not hundreds, thousands, hundreds or thousands as well. And then looking down on the rocks here again, you'll sometimes see some murres, and you'll see cormorants nesting down in these rocks here. These are Brandt's cormorants in this picture here. And cormorants build a nest out of material. They have up to 4 eggs, which most seabirds do not, but these are not a shradriform. These are in their other group. They're a pelecaniformes. And cormorant chicks are just amazing looking. It's a pile of them that sits in the nest, and they have these little slithering snake-like necks that come up and get food. And one of my jobs was to count how many chicks were in a nest, and just a seemingly impossible task because they all blend in together and their necks all kind of just intertwine as they come up for food. And but once it gets into 3, 4, really feels like guesswork. Another bird you'll see that's not technically a seabird, a couple of them here, the black oyster catcher with its reddish bill is commonly seen down in here, and they'll nest just above the wave zone right in the rocks. They're a shorebird, but they belong to the shradriforms as well. And peregrine falcons nest in here. There's a pair of them, and they perch. There's a couple perches you can see in this area. If you're looking for peregrines, look up on the cliffs and look for little white streaks. They have roosts, and they'll kind of change their spots. There's a roost over here, and there's another one somewhere in here. But usually they kind of come back to that same spot pretty regularly, and they poop from there, and that poop kind of white stains the rock in that area. So it's a good indicator. If it's high up, it's not going to be, and by itself, it's not going to be a cormorant or a seabird. Cormorants nest, as you can see here, colonially. And later in the year, you can really start to see the white build up on the rocks. And that's a good thing to look for, and then get your binoculars out and take a look. Okay, Eric has a comment, and he guessed, oh yeah, he got Hoodmerganser. I was told that with the increase in eagles locally, the resulting predation of murres and puffin eggs by the crows, there hasn't been any successful nesting sites in our area. True and true, yes. I'm gonna talk about that in this next slide here, so I am gonna get to that. The reason why, let me back out then, here, this, boop. Boop, boop, boop. Reason why murres haven't nested here yet they show up is they get hazed by bald eagles. And I have a picture of that in the next one. And well, I'll talk about that in the next one. But yeah, so the murres show up here. They attempt to nest, but they just get run off, and they don't successfully lay eggs, or if they do lay, they're not able to retain those eggs. And there's a layering of impact there, right? The eagle comes in, and then the corvids and the gulls come in and secondarily prey on the chick or the egg as a result of that. So pop quiz time, identify this bird, and then seabird or not a seabird. See if anybody can guess this one. And distinguishing features on this one would be these 2 white patches here on this one. This is a cormorant. And these white patches give it away as being a pelagic cormorant. You'll see these soaring around down in here, and so look for those white patches. It tells you right away that it's a pelagic cormorant on either side of the rump. And because it's pelagic, well, it's a seabird. Pelagic means seabird on that one. So yeah. Okay, if you're out at Cape Meares, and here's the lighthouse right here, and then looking towards the 3 arch rocks. Shelley, you got it, pelagic cormorant. Nice one. If you're looking towards the 3 arch rocks, you can see large numbers of murres out here, but you have quite a distance to cover, so you need a clear day, good light, and a spotting scope. And there you are looking out at the Three Arch Rocks from Cape Meares Lighthouse. But even with binoculars, you can see a lot of activity out there. It's amazing how you don't notice it sometimes. Standing at Oceanside, you can see it with the naked eye, but you pull up your binoculars and look, and all of a sudden it's just this swarm of bird activity around the rocks. And those are common murres. In large numbers, they attempt to nest there as well every year. And again, fairly unsuccessfully. I know that no birds have nested out on these rocks successfully or laid eggs. I don't know that we have good enough eyes on some of these rocks to really tell if there is any success here. It's not much quantifiable success, let me say that. Seabirds like to nest on the side of the rocks facing the ocean. So away from us. So when we're on land, we have a really hard time seeing them. The backside tends to be windless, and so they have a hard time taking off and landing on those sides. So they tend to populate the side facing the ocean and facing the wind, cools them down. And again, they can take off and land then. So you need to be in a boat, or from this vantage at Cape Meares, you can kind of see the side. So here's what Eric, you had mentioned. And it is the impact of bald eagles. Now, there is some speculation with biologists that the impact the eagles are having right now is huge, because eagle numbers went down so drastically for a long time, and now eagles are bouncing back and they're a common sight. For a long time, eagles weren't a common sight. But historically, they were here. And so some of the thought is, and this is, again, hypothetical speculation, but done by educated people, that the murres basically aren't used to eagles. We've had almost a generation of murres that have grown up without them, and so when they see an eagle, they flush and they take off. And that is one thing. If you're ever out there looking and suddenly you see a huge burst of bird activity over a rock, just taking off, look for the eagle, and you're going to find it. It's out there hazing them, flying over. And birds just don't have any natural hunker down instinct yet, and they'll probably develop it. I've worked in Alaska, obviously, and eagles are common there. Eagles, peregrine falcons, ravens prey on these birds. I've watched a raven land, grab a murre by its tail with its bill, and whip it off a nest just to get at the egg. And the birds hunker down. They don't flinch nearly as much as these birds do. So maybe our murres just over time will, be less flinchy. But how long this takes, right? When you're talking about natural selection, some of these things aren't necessarily learned behaviors. They're genetic dispositions. But with murres, they live a long time. So maybe these will be learned ones. But yeah, the eagles fly over, scare the birds off. The birds fly up, leaving their eggs and their chicks exposed, and then the gulls and everybody else comes in and just eats lunch and has a heyday on them. And again, these predators are present wherever seabirds nest in the world, but here birds just aren't used to them yet, and so they're learning. It's a thought. Okay, I'm just going to do a few more slides and then I'm going to open it up for questions. I know I'm running a little bit long here. I put up a list of some of the birds that we would see here commonly. I also threw a slide up of some of Ron Popish's artwork for the Oregon Islands that showcases some of our seabirds as well. Of course, this is the common murre, and this is the most common seabird that we have. You'll see them in large rafts out in the ocean if you look with binoculars, and you'll see a little bit of that white on the underside. And their size also gives them away. They're gull-sized, I would say. There's a common murre. And you'll also see them flying. They usually are in small groups when they're flying in, and that real rapid wing beat. And you can see that white underside of them. That will tell you that it's a murre. Puffins we'll see as well. Tufted puffins, not as numerous, but you can see them. They're smaller than the murre. They have that same wing beat, but they're black in the belly. And so look for that just completely dark ball of fluff that is pretty good size. You can see me holding one here. Tufted puffin that we have, but they have that rapid wing beat, but the dark underside. We don't have horned puffins here, or at least not commonly. You might see them in the winter out in the ocean, but the horned puffin has the white underside. Our puffin has a dark underside, and that would be the tufted puffin. Another one that I'm a huge fan of, I love seeing these, is the rhinoceros auklet, or we commonly just refer to them as rhinos. right here. And they have that horn projection on them. They're a large, heavy-bodied bird. They sit low in the water. So one of the things when you're looking for these guys, you see them sometimes in the mouths of bays. See them at Yaquina Bay. Here in Tillamook Bay, I've seen a group of around, I think it was 18, 19 that I counted near the mouth of the bay, and they feed on a variety of bait fish. They're relative to the puffin. They're actually more a puffin than an auklet. But common namage, they're in their own genus, but they have this horn projection that pops up, and again, they sit really low in the water, and that is kind of a giveaway for them. And these are a burrowing bird. They dig burrows and they come in and leave at night. So usually don't see them flying back and forth to their burrows during the day because they come in and they'll even nest on mainland itself in some of their burrows. So they come in at night to avoid detection from predators. An auklet that we have, and most auklets are further north, but we do have this one here, and this is our Cassin's auklet. These feed in upwelling zones out in the ocean on krill and things like that. So they've been really affected in recent years by these warm water occurrences that we have, which drives the zooplankton lower, and which means they don't migrate up as high in the water. They stay where it's cool, and these birds aren't able to dive deep enough to get at the food source, and so they starve. We've had some big die-offs in recent years because of that. These are also a burrowing bird, and they also come in at night. I'll wrap it up here with a story about these. We were mist netting and banding a really rare type of bird, a whiskered auklet, in the Aleutians. And at nighttime, setting up mist nets at 2 in the morning, which was always fun. And I caught a Cassin's auklet, and one was my first time seeing when it came in, and I was trying to get it out, and it was really tangled up. It really wrapped itself. These birds have an attitude, they really do. And it was screeching, and it was on me, and I was trying to stay calm and get it out, and it wasn't working with me. It kept tangling itself up more. And then as a bird defense, birds puke. I mentioned that with the tube noses. As I almost had it out, the bird looked at me and vomited, and then shook its head violently side to side while it did it, like, ah! And puke went everywhere, all over my face and in my mouth. I wasn't expecting it. I had my mouth kind of slightly open, and I could taste the plankton. It was interesting. And I got back to the cabin, and there was a researcher, and he'd been working out there for 20 years. He was on the island for a few weeks working with us, and I said, oh, I caught a Cassin's auklet in my net. And he said, they're the most vile, disgusting bird ever. Did it puke in your mouth? And I thought that was hilarious because it had happened to him as well. So apparently they have a reputation for this type of behavior. Man, my presentation was much bigger than the time allotted me to go, but I like to talk. So at this point, I'm just going to open it up. This was where I get into my work in Alaska, to any questions out there that people have. And yeah.
Yeah, so we had some people that enjoyed your vomit story you just shared.
True story.
Yeah, let me go back and see if we have any other last questions popping up. You did such a good job answering them as we were talking. So so I'll just give a few seconds here for people to kind of answer some questions if they have them, or ask questions if they have them. So everybody knows, Slade has another section to his presentation where he talks about his research in Alaska, and it's fascinating to hear about what life is like as you're a researcher out there on the Aleutian Islands. So I don't know if we're trying to find another time to do that section, or if anybody's dying to hear it, you can let us know in the comments. So
yeah, throw it out there, and I'd be happy to do another, half an hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half. I can talk. So
we have a thank you for the great presentation. So thank you for sharing that, Susan. Thank you for coming from California virtually to join us. And then Eric said he really enjoyed this as well, and he's missing being at the coast, which we totally get, completely get that. So
yeah, it's not a bad place to be locked down at.
No, it's not. Yeah. It's not. We have a question. So other places to see peregrine falcons.
Ooh, other places to see peregrine falcons. So Cape Meares, of course, is the main spot. It's funny, I haven't seen them, but I've heard them out at Cape Lookout. I think anywhere there's seabirds, you're going to find peregrine falcons. Peregrines are specialized in birds, and they love a big, tasty meal. In my experience, they really love tufted puffins. Pretty big for them, but it's one of their favorite snacks. So Haystack Rock is a good one. Either one of our Haystack Rocks to the north and south, you can see them. And I'm trying to think of, well, of course, right, Cape Falcon. You probably have some out there, and you can hear them. Peregrine falcons have a real raspy, screechy chatter. It sounds like they've been chain smoking menthols or something like that. It's just super raspy. And so look up their call if you're not familiar with it, but familiarize yourself with it, because I often hear them before I see them, and it's a real giveaway.
That I never heard anybody say that peregrine falcons is like a chain smoker. Thank you.
You know, it sounds like someone laughing in a bingo parlor.
That was awesome. So we have some more thanks. I've learned so much, really enjoyed it. Kevin, Elizabeth, and Netarts say thank you. Sounds like we've got a lot of really great feedback. Everyone really enjoyed it. So what I'll say is Slade and I will just kind of keep monitoring the questions here in the Facebook feed for the next 5 minutes or so. And if we have some more questions pop up, we'll answer them there. And if you have something that hits you in the middle of the night, like, darn, I wish I had asked Slade, then you can email those to us, and we will get those off to Slade so he can answer them. So if you would like to do that, or you can message us on Facebook.
Yeah, or you can post them in the comment thread or whatever, and I'll take a look at those too.
Yeah, and if email is a better option for you for some reason, then you can reach us at webspresident@aol.com. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes. Yeah, a couple of people, seems like some thought boxes are happening. And know that Slade will be back with us later in the month to bring back the ancient plants of the Oregon coast presentation that he did. Again, it's going to be a bummer that we don't actually get to go out and do this with Slade in the field. But this was our first time doing it. It was last year. And it was a lot of fun and super informative. So if that sounds interesting to you, right now we have it on our schedule for May 31st. Sometimes things change, especially right now because of everything going on, but that's where we have it bookmarked for now. So mark on your calendar, it'll be towards the end of May for that talk. And that was a super fun one last year, Slade.
Yeah, I love that one. That one's fun. And of course, you know, I have my degree in botany, but I spent most of my time with birds, so it's always fun to go back to the origin story.
I have some really great footage, and it's the first place I learned about a bigger maker, which is a magnifying glass or a hand lens, for anybody who doesn't know what it is. Yes, Eric has a question. This video will be available later. So after we conclude this live presentation, it will stay here. So if you want to view it again, you can. Also, in the comment section, I put a link to Slade's presentation. He was really, really kind in offering us a link to his Google Drive so that you guys can view all of this, I guess, probably as well as your Alaska videos or slides that you didn't really get to cover right now. So
yeah, there's a whole other 20 slides there that I didn't get to. So
yeah,
have a look.
So that will be there too. So yes, it definitely will be there later. All right, well, I think we're saying goodbye and thank you for joining us. I guess the silver lining of this is that it was super rainy today. So if we were allowed to go out adventuring, we would all have been really wet. And right now we stayed warm with a cup of coffee. So I guess there's that silver lining. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. So great to connect with you, Slade, on this topic. And yeah, like I said, we'll be available online to answer your questions for the next few minutes. Other than that, we hope you have a really great day and stay connected with us and join us on some other virtual adventures that we're going to try and produce for everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming.
All right. Okay, we're going to sign off here, but we'll be online for the next few minutes. All right, thanks everybody for joining us and have a great day.